This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession. All right, this episode is brought to you by The Top Predator. It is a fitness archery challenge. Do you have what it takes to be the top predator? The registration is now open at thetoppredator.com. Get your spot. Let's see what you got, what it takes. All right, guys. My guest today for this podcast is a new friend of mine, Mr. Garrick. He lives in Hawaii, and we have been chatting back and forth. We're going to trade out a hunt. I'm going to take him elk hunting, which he's been before, but I'm going to take him out. He's going to take me out in April. Garrick, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's up? How's it going, Kurt? Yeah. Nothing much, man. Just finishing work and doing the daily grind and just trying to get it all done so we can get out in the field and get out in the water and do some playing.
Heck yeah, man. I can't help to take a look at your background. Look at all those like badass rams back there. And they're a little bit different, right? Like those are different rams. Are those all from Hawaii?
Yeah. So all of these sheep here are from Hawaii. The Big Island. We have a mixture. It's kind of unique because we have a mixture of mouflon, pharaoh sheep, and they get kind of interbred, and then we get what you call like a hybrid, like a mix between the two. Yeah. And so I mean, this one of my favorite animals to chase around is a big ram, but I love it. I love hunting sheep and goats and anything that has four legs. I mean, I'll chase whatever there is. Pigs.
Right on, man. You gonna have one of those big rams tied up for me when I come hunt with you in April?
I'll try. I can't make any promises. But
just put them in.
I know there's a few that
and then like release him the day before I get there, so like you know where he's at.
Right.
So you know him, right?
We'll have a name for him. We'll have a name for him when you show up.
Okay, yeah, you got to name him, right? Like that's kind of like whitetail hunting 101. You got to name the buck that you're after. We got to name that ram that we're after when I'm out there.
Well, I know a buddy that's got one in the pen right now, so we can tie him up. I'm playing. All of these sheep that I go after and goats and whatever are all free range animals. So that's another nice thing in Hawaii is that, you know, I would say there is some high fence areas, but probably about 98% of the hunting here is all just free range. So,
well, yeah. I mean, it's islands. It's like high watered area, right? Like they're not going anywhere. They're on the island. You know what I mean?
Well, you know that. So what is kind of funny is that on some of the islands are fairly close, and there are possibilities that like they found axis deer swimming in the ocean.
No kidding.
Like, oh yeah, like between islands, yeah, they've seen deer swimming in the ocean. So I mean, there is a possibility that one deer could have jumped island to island.
I tell you what, man, those axis deer are pretty amazing. I would not put it past them just to jump in the water and swim to another island, right?
Oh no, it's so crazy. I've literally seen some jump off of cliffs right into the ocean.
Holy cow!
I've seen that. Yeah. So
well, guys,
I would not put it past them that they would end up from one island to the other, and it's a far swim. I know I wouldn't make it from one island to the next.
I wouldn't even try it, man. Well, guys, if you're listening here, and obviously you are, if you're hearing my voice, Hawaii is freaking amazing. I went there for the first time. I've never even been to Hawaii before last year. I went and hunted axis deer on Molokai. I absolutely fell in love, Garrett, with Hawaii hunting, man. And I just got a little taste. It was one day, dude. One day hunting. I'm like, I've got to come back every year. I want to come back every year and hunt. And
hunting here in Hawaii, I mean, I love it. I mean, I can, you know, it's a different atmosphere, you know, compared to I've been getting out to the mainland here and there. I mean, I'm on this quest of trying to harvest a big game animal in every state. But I love hunting in Hawaii. I mean, I've been basically doing it since I was 5. You know, as soon as I could walk, my dad was taking me out in the field there, and there's some pretty funny stories with that. But the opportunities of hunting here in Hawaii, I mean, if you've never been here, I mean, it's actually quite a bit of a paradise. because we got hunting of some sort year round. And then not to mention the fishing aspect of it too. We got awesome fishing. I mean, shoreline fishing, deep sea fishing, big fish, sport game fishing. I mean, it's basically it's a paradise. It is paradise here.
Yeah, man, 100%. And you just said something that piqued my interest because I love talking about how you get into hunting because I think everyone has their own kind of cool, unique story, and I want to hear some of those funny stories about how you got into hunting with your dad. Is that right? As a boy?
Yep. So my dad was, I mean, he was a bow hunter here for, I mean, one of the original, I wouldn't say original. There's guys from before him, but there wasn't a lot of bow hunters here in Hawaii. A lot of them were rifle hunters. And I've got a lot of the stories, obviously. Back in my day, this kind of that. But so a funny story. I don't know if I like sharing this story too much, but it does make for a good story. Um, so one of my first recollections of hunting, we went archery hunting in this area, Puanahulu, which is on the Big Island, and we go out, and I don't even know. I must be like 5 or 6 years old. I don't know. I mean, basically one of the first things that I can remember. And we go out and um, so we get out in the field and there's a herd of goats. So I'm all excited, I'm like, yeah, he's like, do you want me to go get it? I don't want to leave you here. And I'm like, no, I want you to go. I want you to get one of those goats. So he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna sit you right here underneath this tree, and I'm gonna try and go and get that goat, and then I'll be back. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so pumped. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna hang out here and wait. So I'm sitting underneath that tree, and I'm watching the goats from where I am. And I guess as as a young kid, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. I mean, when you're out in the field all by yourself and you're like, what's going on here? Like how long has it been? I mean, minutes turn into hours. And so I'm sitting there and I'm watching these goats. I have no clue where my dad is, but it starts getting dark, and I'm like, okay, did he just like leave me here or what? So this is where the funny part comes in. I start like yelling for him, like I'm calling out, Daddy, Daddy. And so in the meantime, he's stocking up on these goats. And I guess to the goats, me yelling for him sounded like another goat. So he was actually on the opposite side, and he said he thought it was going to work out in his favor, where the goats were going to get scared and kind of come over towards him. They ended up coming towards me, and he said they came towards me, and he was trying to get back up on them, and so I'm sitting underneath this tree, and now I'm hearing noises because all these goats are like coming my way.
You didn't even know you knew how to call goats, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was I guess I had that one in me from when I was a small kid. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of one of the first stories. I mean, you would think that may be a traumatizing one, but I never lost interest in the hunt. So
well, yeah, you should have just had your dad like leave a little bow for you or something, right?
Right. I mean, it was an interesting. I mean, that's one of the first stories that I don't always like sharing because it's a little humiliating, but it makes for a good story.
Yeah, no, that's a good story, man. I like it, especially how like you started calling them the goats because you're yelling for your dad. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I imagine like growing. So I grew up in the Midwest in Nebraska, right, smack dab in the middle of the United States. And hunting growing up in the Midwest, I'm sure was quite a bit different than hunting growing up in Hawaii, where we did some bow hunting too, but it was like tree stand hunting. You sat up in the tree under, try to find the best sign you can and just sat there and wait and hope something came by, right? Like that was and then we did a lot of like pheasant and quail hunting, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Gun season came around and it was all about whitetail hunting, but it was always cold. And like, I remember as a little kid, man, just shivering my butt off at like 8 years old, but not wanting to get out of the stand because, man, I loved hunting. Even when I was a little boy, like I didn't want to come out, right? So how was it growing up in Hawaii, man? Obviously you weren't shivering your butt off because it's usually pretty warm there.
Well, So it is nice. We have awesome weather here. Growing up, I mean, not so much ever really sitting in a tree stand, like how I could imagine, Nebraska and tree stand hunting. Most of the hunting that we do here with archery, uh, a lot of spot and stalk. So, we were basically on foot, um, glassing, finding the animals, putting the stock on, and it was a lot. I mean, that's my one passion. I mean, spot and stalk is. Don't get me wrong. I'll sit up in a tree all day waiting for a deer to come by, but if I can go out and try and outsmart that animal and be able to get into bow range, I mean, that's one of my true passions. And from a young kid, I mean, it was, when I first started bow hunting, um, there were still the old style wheels, and like when they first came out with those little pins that you'd get the nail polish and you'd polish that little ball up,
Yeah.
and with there was no release back then, it was all fingers, so it was
yeah.
it was challenging, aluminum arrows. And man, I don't remember how many arrows I flung at animals, and I've never it took me a while to get one, but I love chasing those things.
Oh yeah, man. I remember like those old bows, man. All fingers. I didn't even have pins because I had like the hand me down or the hand me down bow, right? Like all the aluminum arrows, and they were all bent, all of them. So I like tried straightening them out the best that I could, and and there's no shooting more than 30 yards, at that back in the day.
Oh,
You don't
30
shoot more.
yards, that was like, that's an impossible shot. You gotta be up close and personal, basically touching the animal, and I'd still miss.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. Like,
But
yeah,
yeah,
obviously,
growing
growing
up
up.
here,
Yeah. Mhm. Go
it's
ahead.
it was an awesome, I mean, awesome childhood. I love growing up here, and like I said, hunting is year round. I mean, it goes, you can hunt game mammals basically all year long if you're on private land. But on the public side, usually right around now, it's coming up, March all the way until October is a good time for public land hunting. And then it goes from November to January, it goes into upland game bird hunting. So we got a lot of upland game birds too here,
Huh.
pheasants and chucker and turkey. I never really got into the turkey hunting, but we got a bunch of them here.
No kidding.
Uh, yeah, that's actually, I got a lot of friends from the mainland that are really into turkey hunting, and honestly, it's a great turkey destination if you want to hunt turkey and that's one of your passions. I mean, there's a lot of them here, and we don't have much guys that really do it here.
Huh. Well,
Yeah.
maybe that might be something I come back and do because I love turkey hunting. It's a lot like
Oh,
elk hunting,
yeah.
where like you can communicate with them, and they'll gobble back and like a bugle, right? Like it's
Right.
a lot. You sit up on them, kind of similar to with like a decoy and call from behind. Like it's kind of similar to elk hunting, man, in a lot of ways, just a lot smaller.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I always grew up and I always seen a bunch of them. So I just, it was always like we'd harvest a few during bird season, but I never really, I I think a few years I played with that call and I couldn't get it figured out. But it wasn't something. I always get guys that come and like, oh, you got turkey hunting? I was like, we got amazing turkey hunting. I just don't know how to do it. I'm gonna be
Sure.
honest. I don't know how to call those things.
But growing up spot and stock, like from probably a young age, right? Like you got your spot and stock skills got to be on point. Where like I didn't start spot and stock hunting until I was probably, I mean, I got out of hunting. I hunted pretty hard until I got like, as a senior to high school, I started getting into girls and sports a little more, right? And I didn't start
Right.
hunting again until like maybe late 20s, maybe early. So, that's like spot and stock, Western style hunting, elk hunting was new to me. That was a big learning curve for me. But you've been doing it since you could probably walk, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost comes naturally in that sense where, um, with any type of hunting or any type of activity you do, the more you do it, the better you get at it. I mean, you learn from your mistakes. So I guess you can say I made a lot of mistakes over the
Oh,
years.
for sure.
And I'm sure I'm a little better from than when I was 6 years old. I'm sure.
Have you tried calling in any sheep like you did when you were 6?
Actually, yeah, it's actually a really good technique.
Yeah.
Especially certain times of the year. I mean, just like elk or anything else, they're sheep and goats, they're herd animals. So, they're very vocal at times when there's not a bunch of predators, which we don't have much of here other than feral dogs.
Mm,
But in some areas, those feral dogs, they can wreak havoc on those herds.
yeah.
So calling in a sheep, I sheep and goat I've done more than a few times. Yeah, it's actually a really good technique.
Dude, you have to show me that when I'm there. Um,
We'll definitely try.
yeah. So like, yeah, you guys don't have hardly anything for predators. That's why I noticed when I was there, like the axis deer are almost like way overpopulated where I was at. And it's actually doing a lot of damage to the landscape, right? Is that
Yeah.
a problem in Hawaii?
So it kind of brings up uh, a big issue here in Hawaii because all of the animals here in Hawaii, especially the four-legged ones, are all introduced animals. So unlike other states, where the state actually sees the value in the animals, I mean, a lot of the states make really good money and do conservation, drawing of tags and whatnot. Hawaii is different in that sense, and the state basically looks at it like these are pests. So they it's a rough conversation here in Hawaii because obviously the hunters and it's a good source of food for all the people here, but at the same time the states see the animals doing damage to native plants and the landscape basically. So I mean, with anything, I think there needs to be good balance, and as of right now, I mean, it's tough doing the, I guess, conservation and doing the numbers and the counts and stuff. Hawaii's management just is not there. I mean, that's the sad part about it.
Right.
In certain islands, those axis deer um, kind of start to wreak havoc after a while because they reproduce very quickly. I've heard that within a year, one doe can drop up to 3 times in a year,
Holy
and
cow.
up to two fawns on a birthing. So there's a possibility that they can drop 6 fawns in a year's time, which is crazy. It's
Yeah.
usually once or twice at most, but I guess on a very good year they can definitely drop a third time, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, and that's kind of where the numbers of the deer start going up and up and up because just not enough of being able to harvest them and not enough predators, like you said, especially on islands like Molokai and Lanai and stuff. I mean, where there's basically no predators there.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, you think Hawaii should introduce like a coyote or something like a predator or
Well,
what?
it's interesting. I mean, you would think that maybe adding a predator would maybe help a little bit, but I think a lot of it is just the restrictions on in certain areas. A lot of this game that you're seeing, especially on like in Molokai and stuff, are all on private land. So the problem is with that is that it's on private land, and so in that sense it doesn't get managed as well as like the public land would, because there's a lot of hunters out here that would love to get out and hunt those deer on private land. It's just the problem with that is that a lot of these landowners, um, they're trying to manage these animals for trophy quality too. And when you get some of the locals just come in, I mean, they're just wanting to harvest meat, or even a trophy. It's hard to manage that aspect of having both, public and private kind of deal in working together.
Right.
So in that aspect, it's pretty tough.
Right. And I
Yeah.
know Molokai is mainly private. There are some little strips of public, but it's mainly private, and that's probably why the population's so high there
Yep.
is
Yep.
lack of hunting and lack of management. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've known. And Molokai is actually the first island that the axis deer was introduced.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. Like from when I was there, the story that I was told was the king at the time, right? Like the king of Hawaii or whatever.
Yep.
That was a gift to him. It was an axis deer. Is
Yes,
that
correct.
right? And that's how the axis deer was introduced.
Yep. So that's how it was introduced. Yeah, it was a gift given from one of the Chinese dynasty, I believe, as a gift, and then they introduced it to Molokai first, and then from Molokai they brought it over to Lanai, and then from Lanai they brought it over to Maui. So those are the three islands that has axis deer.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like I was saying, the axis deer, they reproduce like wildfire, and so this year, from what I'm hearing, the reports that I've been talking to my buddies out in Lanai, which is always a really good hunt for axis deer. They had a major drought. We had a major drought this year. It was a really bad drought. We weren't getting much water. I mean, we had one of the biggest fires on the Big Island that wiped out a lot of land. Um, and generally, it comes back fairly quickly with rain. But we went through that big drought season, and a lot of that deer got really, really sick because the population again. Also because of the COVID deal. Lanai does a state hunt every year, generally every year, and the amount of hunters that they have coming in that to do these hunts keep the population of deer down on Lanai. But due to COVID, um, the first year that COVID kind of hit, they shut that whole hunt down. And then the following year, they did the same thing. They didn't have another hunt. And then last year, they kind of did a cutback of how many hunters actually come in. So the deer population kind of exploded. We got a bad drought, and a lot of the deer on Lanai died because of that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And that goes right into management. And, we can definitely go down the rabbit hole of COVID for sure. I think we should probably stay away from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, from state to state, a lot of hunters just, the out of state hunters that come in are not necessarily looked fondly upon, right? Like there's definitely those hunters who are like, oh man, out of staters are coming in. It's elk season. We got all these guys coming in. Like, is that similar down in Hawaii? Is the mainlanders that come down to Hawaii looked like they're like, how's that perceived from the locals?
It's funny that you bring that up because and I'm gonna be on both sides of that fence because you know in Hawaii we're like it's a mixing pot here. I mean, we've got so many different nationalities here. I mean, you name it, we've got it over here. Filipino, Hawaiian, Japanese, Portuguese. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, there's probably every single ethnicity out here. But in the hunting aspect and generally just outsider aspect, um, Hawaii has like a word. Well, it's kind of like a name basically for the outsiders, which I'm not sure if you've ever heard, but so the word that they use is haole.
Howley?
And haole, yeah.
Okay.
Haole. And so haole, it basically it comes down to one without breath. And people take that as okay, white, no breath, they're white. But that's not generally the case. It's actually anyone that doesn't have that Hawaiian bloodline because the breath of I guess that Hawaiian back to the Hawaiian days. So if you don't have the blood, then basically you don't breathe like the Hawaiian whatever, the air, whatever. So in actuality, basically anyone that's not Hawaiian is a haole. But it's generalized with people that come in from the mainland. And I this is how I look at it. You're always gonna have good and bad, no matter who you deal with. I mean, so if you got you just have people that come in and they just don't think that their shit don't stink, and
Sure.
then you know what I'm saying. I mean, I
Mhm.
hate to say it that way, but that's just kind of how it goes. And then obviously you got the good people out there that just like everyone else that just want to come out and enjoy the outdoors, and there's nothing wrong with any. I don't see anything wrong with any of that. I don't mind people coming in. I mean, that's how I meet a lot of good people that I know. I mean, that's the thing I love about what we do here. I mean, you
Oh yeah.
meet awesome people that love the same thing as you do, and it makes for an awesome experience.
Yeah, man. 100%. Like it's all about who that person is. And there's definitely those bad apples that ruin the whole bunch that are like maybe egotistical, that don't respect if you're on like private land, you're not respecting the land, you're not respecting the culture. Like same thing with state to state, the out of staters that come in and that don't it's just bad apples, man. It just is
Yeah.
what it is. So yeah, man, I was just
And
curious on how that perception was.
yeah, I mean it's the same way. Like you get the same type of anything. I mean, if there's no respect on that end, it's I don't care where anywhere you go, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You're always gonna have that type of mentality, I guess you can say.
Yeah. Well,
With
and obviously Hawaii is known to be a big tourism place. So it's not like, man, you are always having outsiders there from the mainlands or from all over the place, right? Like that's probably
Yeah.
a constant thing. I did notice that Molokai was a lot less touristy. That culture is a lot more native, right? What other islands? Like, tell me about like some of the islands that there's hunting on, and like what makes one a little bit different than the other.
So let's see. So basically hunting in Hawaii, you got the Big Island, you got Maui, you got Lanai, you got Kauai, and you got Niihau. Are the five islands that there's some hunting on. And all of them are different in the aspect of you have different game on separate islands, and just basically what you see. I mean, the terrain, um, you know, they're all basically every island you go to, you'll see a difference in what the island has to offer. Um, Big Island, like where I'm from, we've got basically desert, we got dry lands, we got rainforest, we've got um, uh, mountains with snow on them. People don't always think that Hawaii's got snow. We got snow. I mean, it's really diverse. It's a lot of lava. I mean, it can get treacherous because it's so fresh. There's places that we call what they call lava, and it's probably the nastiest thing you will ever walk on because and the Hawaiians basically because when they'd walk on it with bare feet, they're like it hurts. I mean, you fall down, it's like a bunch of razor rocks.
Oh
Is
yeah.
basically the best thing that I can explain it. And then you go off to like Lanai and Niihau, which are on the further end of the on the island chain, and they're older islands. They've been broken down a lot more with over time, and so you'll get yeah, in Kauai even just a lot of rainfall. You'll get big giant valleys. I mean, just nasty cliffs, and so it's every island you go to has its own little. I mean, you can go from island to island and you'll notice a difference wherever you go. There's always going to be a little bit of a change in scenery and
All right.
whatnot.
Man, I want to experience it all, man. Like
It's yeah.
I want to island hop and hunt on every one of them. All right,
Yeah,
so
it's
if I was a hunter, first
uh,
time, never been to Hawaii, um, what do we have to? What would a guy have to do? I know like you have to pass a hunter safety
yep.
test, but what are some other things like a first time guy coming in to hunt? What do they need to do? Where would you recommend them hunting? Is there enough public land to hunt? Go for it.
So that's a good question. So Hawaii basically, like you said, passing a hunter safety course. Um, the nice thing with Hawaii is that you buy a general license, a hunting license every year. Usually it re-ups itself every June. And for a non-resident, it's $125. So with that $125 hunting license, you have access to basically all the public hunting land. Certain areas require tags, but generally the tags are fairly cheap. I mean, I'm just gonna take for instance here that spot Honolulu. It's like a $10 tag for a goat, like a $10 for a ram. Um, and then you got some other islands like Lanai that does that state hunt, that state access hunt, and they have a state mouflon hunt, which this year they're changing it up due to the COVID deal, but they actually combined it together. And those tags are a little bit more um, for a non-resident. I think the tags are $125, and that one you need to put in for a draw, which the draw just closed, but I mean in the following years you can do it. And all these other areas kind of have similar. It really depends on. It comes down to really what animal you want to hunt. I guess the first question you got to ask yourself is what kind of animal you want to hunt and try and harvest, and then from there figure out which islands have that animal. Like I said, like Lanai and Molokai and Maui have deer, and pigs are Kauai and Big Island, Oahu even. So first you get an idea of what animal you want to try and hunt, and then figure out what island they're on, and then go from there. You go and see what public area, or you can do. They have paid hunts in private lands. There's actually quite a bit, and they're really some really good ones out here. If you're looking for trophy animals, but public land, there's a bunch of public land. Definitely on the Big Island, some on Oahu, um, Lanai, Maui, and Kauai. All of the islands basically have a bunch of public land. It just basically comes down to what and where you want to hunt.
Right. Like I know the research I did before I came, well, it was exactly that. All right, what animal do I want to hunt, and what islands have those animals, and that's where I kind of started. I in so when you say paid hunt on private land, are you talking more of like hiring an outfitter, or are you talking about like a trespass fee?
So there's a little bit of both. There's a bunch of different outfitters that you can go through, um, and guides on basically almost all the different islands on private lands, and then on certain islands like Lanai, there's and even here on the Big Island, there's areas where you can pay a trespass fee. So it'd be a non-guided hunt um, on private land, and you pay your trespass fee, and then you get like a certain bag limit of whatever animal that you want to harvest. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely diverse. I mean, it's every type of hunting opportunity that you really can think of here.
And the
So
beautiful thing about it is it's year round, man.
it
Like
is it's year round.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk
So
about fishing.
huh?
Not only the hunting's badass, but the fishing, man. Like if you guys like to fish, Hawaii's got some hellacious fishing, right?
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Hawaii is a paradise. I mean, people say paradise. Hawaii is a paradise. I mean, I've been just fortunate to grow up here. born and raised in Hawaii, and it's fishing here is amazing. I mean, the nice thing with being in Hawaii is that because we're off basically volcanic island, um, we got steep drop offs, and if you go down like on the East Coast when you go fishing and you want to do like trophy big game fishing, marlin, tuna, mahi ono, whatever, you got to run like 50, 60 miles out to the drop off,
Mhm.
where here, like right off of I'm gonna just take off of Kona, Kailua Kona here on the Big Island. You get less than a mile offshore, and you're in 1,000 fathoms of water. That's 6,000 feet, less than a mile from shore.
Right. Like within, 20 minutes, you're deep sea fishing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so going into that, I mean, I've hooked my biggest marlin out of Kona Harbor, and I basically came past the green buoy coming in, when going out, passing the green buoy right outside of the harbor. I was setting my lures out. Before I could even get the third lure out, the marlin bit it. And it was a 863-pound marlin
Holy
right
cow,
outside of the
man.
green buoy. There was charter boats that were coming out of the harbor still, like watching me fight this 800 something pound marlin. So if that's a good indicator of how good the fishing can be here.
Yeah.
It gets hot, and that's another thing. The fishing here, I mean, there's better times here to fish. A lot of times summertime is kind of when you hear there's a bunch of fish, and that's kind of like a really good time if you want to come down and do some fishing. But year round, I mean, there's tuna, marlin. I mean, it's endless. There's a bunch of fish here year round, and I mean, summer may be better, but even in the wintertime, it's still good. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah. And that's one thing when I was there hunting, like I was supposed to be glassing, like I needed to be glassing to find, but like I was just staring at the ocean, man, and staring at the scenery. And like there's so many opportunities where I was hunting anyway. Like I think that morning we went on at least 10 stalks and I was wore out, man. Like it went from stock to stock to stock to stock. I was like, hold on, we need a break. Time out. Let's go get some lunch because I am wore out, man. So man, I had a blast, man.
yeah, it's a game rich environment. I mean, I had it was funny that you said that because I had a buddy of mine come last year, and it was the same way. We'd go out, spot a bunch of sheep. Okay, make a play. Okay, we got busted, whatever it may be. They go, I pop up on the neck, kind of come up on a ridge, start glassing. There's another herd of sheep there. Let's go. And he's like, what? Like, okay, we're moving again. And it's just go, 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 go. And then to the point where he's like, dude, you gotta slow down. Just stop. We gotta take a break. I'm like, but there's animals there. There's animals there.
It's a good problem to have, man.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, man, like I'm excited to hunt more in Hawaii because, just the scenery is amazing. The weather's amazing. The animals, I mean, I didn't realize how cool the sounds of those axis deer are, man. Well, I don't know. It's not a bugle. You don't call it a bugle. I can't remember what you call it, but like super
Like a
cool when they're
bar.
rutting. Like, yeah, like a
Oh,
growl almost.
it's like a howl.
Yeah.
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 So a
And
lot of fun.
it's funny too because so like here, like I said, Hawaii is kind of like a mixing pot. So we got the Samoans and stuff, and they have like a little call that. And if you've seen any of my videos, sometimes I do it because I just it's an awesome feeling kind of doing it, but it's just kind of like chee-hoo.
Oh
So I
yeah.
was hunting, actually the first time that I ever heard of that buck call out, I was like, who the heck is chee-hooing in this place? Because, it was like a raspy, just, and I was like, what the heck is going on in here?
But yeah, it's super cool, man. I was there like, man, they're such a cool looking animal. And I don't know. The hunting is awesome. I haven't done any fishing there, but the fishing would be super cool. I really look forward to like going hunting in Hawaii like yearly. I'll probably be there for sure every year. Like,
You
but
need to come down here every year.
absolutely. So like let's say that, someone comes over, they kill something, or they've been fishing and they have meat.
Yep.
What's your process? What do you tell guys from the mainland to get meat back over to the mainland?
Um, so getting any type of meat, fish, anything back, basically, you know, be ready to pay a big airplane bill, a shipping bill, basically, because I mean, there's no restrictions on getting any of the meat back to the mainland. Um, Basically, process. We don't have. That's the one thing that we don't get a lot of here is processing plants, kind of like, meat processing places here compared to what I've noticed up in the mainland. You get a lot of processing, and I guess growing up here, I mean, that's all we did. You hunt and then you process your meat. So a lot. I mean, it depends if you're the type that likes to get it processed. That might be a little bit of an issue here, uh, as we don't have that type of facility here. But if you're the type that don't mind processing all your own game, it's basically you clean your game, you bag it up, and you get it on the plane and fly it back.
Yeah, and I usually process all my own game anyway. And that's exactly what I did. Is when I went there, is we froze it. I bought a
Yep.
cooler while I was there, stuffed in
Yep.
a cooler, duct taped the cooler, and checked the bag. And that, yeah, you're right. Like that bag was very expensive, but I tell you what, Axis deer meat is amazing. I will pay that fee anytime to get Axis deer meat back over to the mainland. I mean, next to elk, it might even be better than elk, man. What do you
It's
think? What's your
it's
favorite
good.
meat?
I like my wild game. I mean, I eat a lot of wild game. I got to finally harvest my first elk this year. I don't know. I love elk. uh, and I love axis. I love it all, but axis deer is. I mean, it's. If I had to pick between elk and axis deer, I really don't know which way I'd go. I really like the elk. Axis deer is awesome too, but I guess maybe because I've always been brought up with it,
Mhm.
it's don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorites, but I think because I haven't eaten as much elk, I
Yeah.
right now I prefer the elk.
Yeah. Well, you ate axis deer growing up. So you're like anything different and new. Well, not anything, but like elk's right there, man. Like they're both really, really good and
I love elk.
tasty
I
good.
have a newfound favorite. That's why I've been like I need to get back up there and hunt elk.
For sure, man. We're definitely going to be chasing some elk around this year. In Hawaii, like say you had to go out right now and
Mhm.
you wanted to go harvest your favorite meat, fish,
Mhm.
hunting, whatever it is, what are you going to get? What are you going after?
Jeez, it's I don't know if I have a favorite. I've been brought up luckily enough where it's kind of like what I crave, I guess you could say, because at a point if you haven't had fish for a while, you're like, oh man, I want some tuna, I want some sashimi, I want some poke, and then you go fishing and you're catching these fish and you're eating fish and you eat fish for like 2-3 weeks straight, and you're like, I need meat, it's like,
Yeah.
uh, so in that case, then it's like, what kind of meal am I craving? Am I craving shoyu pork? Like, okay, I gotta go out and kill me a nice fat hog. Do I want some baby back sheep ribs? Oh, okay, I gotta go out and go find me a sheep. So that's what's nice about it year round. Is like, what are you craving? It's
Right.
kind of
That
how
is
it
nice.
kind of goes.
And as a local, like, is there, I can't remember, but I think that there is no bag limit as a local. Is that correct?
Well, in certain areas, there's no bag limit. So private land, basically, you can do whatever you want. If you have access to private land, um, you can basically harvest as much animals as the private land will let you offer. There are some public land that same thing. There's no bag limit, and in those areas, there. like I said, the state's basically trying to get rid of the animals in that area. So in that sense, there's no bag limit. And then you got other areas that are managed a little bit more that, like I said, you have to have a tag, and you're limited to a certain amount of game in that certain areas.
Right.
But like I said, year round, I mean, there's always some place that you can go and hunt whatever you're craving, basically,
Yeah.
or fish,
Yeah. We went, my wife loves fishing, so we went deep sea fishing this last year, and we got some tuna, we got some wahoo, we got like some yellowtail, and like, oh man, this amazing meat. So like, and when I told her I'm going to Hawaii to hang out with you, right?
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, I'm coming. I want to go fishing."
Bring her along. Bring
But
her
like,
along.
see, we have a newborn now, and like, but I'm, I definitely think at some point, like, I'll learn the ropes from you here in a little bit. I'm definitely gonna have to bring her to Hawaii to do some fishing for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, you got to come here every year at least,
At
And
least,
I love having new people come that have that same passion. I
yeah,
I I don't know. Maybe I mean I kind of I don't say for me I try and do the extreme, but I don't know. I just have this drive of wanting to get out and hunt and fish as much as possible, which is I'm sure everyone does. But
yep.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that I love it. I can't get enough of it.
Garrick, how old are you now? Because I got a kind of a story after you tell me.
Okay, so I just turned 39 this year.
39.
I
Okay.
had to think about it.
So I turned 40. I'm 42 now, but when I turned 40, I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or what, but I'm like just so like hunting and adventure. Like, and I hunted, but like it was just calling me, man. Like that drive, like I have to go on as many badass hunting adventures as I absolutely can before I die. So like that's when I started doing the hunting show and like doing all this. So I've only been doing it for a couple of years, but I'm right there with you. I'm like, okay, I am stacking my calendar full of hunting adventures, and Hawaii is definitely on it for sure.
It should be, and then I highly recommend it to anyone that's ever even thought of it. I mean, a lot of them have never thought of it. They're like, "Oh, there's hunting in Hawaii." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, is the hunting in Hawaii is pretty like mind blowing."
It really, and I was that guy, man. I thought of Hawaii like, oh, that's a vacation destination when you go sit on the beach, and I never was really drawn that much to Hawaii. Like I'm not a big hot weather fan anyway. I love like the mountains and the cold. So like I was like, yeah, it'd be cool. I'm sure it's pretty and I'm sure it has cool beaches. But like once I found out, like, wait, Hawaii has some really cool hunting. I'm there. I'm gone. I literally like booked a trip and was gone in 30 days last year.
That's honestly that's like most people. Most people that have never been here that come here and figure out that there's awesome hunting and fishing, they usually come every year after that.
Yeah. So sorry. Like what? Hey, what was that term again for outsider?
Oh, howley.
Howley.
Yeah.
This Howley's coming back every year. Sorry, guys.
You you know what a lot of locals say though, right?
uh,
Come, but don't forget to go home.
yeah. Come, bring some money, help out the economy, inject that in for sure, but then get your butt back to the mainland. Oh, Garrick, man, this has been fun, dude. All right, let me end it with this is like as a hunter, and this is all about, man, I'm just trying to like bring value to hunters that have never been to Hawaii and help them out a little bit. So new hunters, definitely do the hunter safety course. You got to do that to go to Hawaii. It's their own hunter safety course. Do a little research on what animal you want to hunt. That'll help you pick out which island. And then OnX or like, any of those apps can show you public land. Just do some research on like what might be a draw, what's public. And then also we didn't touch on this, but like there's some spots that you cannot hunt certain days of the week though either, right?
Correct.
Tell me
So
more about that real quick.
so just a short one in a nutshell. I mean, a lot of public land hunting in Hawaii is only on the weekends and state and federal holidays. So that's another thing to take into consideration when you're coming to hunt here, is that if you're going to hunt public land, plan to do it on the weekends or on a holiday, because a lot of these areas that's the only days that they're open.
Right.
There are some areas that are open every single day, but those, not saying that those areas don't have animals to be hunted. They're just going to be obviously a lot more pressured and a little harder to hunt. So there's good areas to hunt. Just kind of do your research as much as possible before making it over here.
Yeah. And no, guys, we're not going to drop a pin for you. Like, we're going to tell you this is the spot to hunt. Like, do your own research, right? Like, Garrick's a nice dude, but like, I don't think he's going to give you his honey hole away, right? So, but yeah, but private land, obviously, you can hunt throughout the week because that's a private landowner. You can do whatever you want there, as long as the landowner's okay. But on public land, it's weekends and holidays for the most part, right?
Yep, correct.
All right. So, as a new hunter, or a new guy, never been to Hawaii, or girl. And what is one thing you would say, hey, once you're here in Hawaii, I know you're hunting this animal, whatever, but you can't go home without doing this? What would that be for you?
Don't go home without doing this. I would say that's a hard one for me. Definitely see the ocean, because that's life-changing. Get up in that mountain, that's another life-changing one. And just take it all in. I mean, I live here, and even though I live here, I swear every time I get out, I'm like, look around and I'm just like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. Dude, that's really good advice, man, because being from Colorado, I have the mountains here all the time. So when I moved here about 15, 20 years ago, whatever it is, like, I would just stare at the mountains being from the Midwest, like, oh my God, the mountains. And I picked certain places to live for a mountain view, and like not realizing as soon as I stepped out my door, I could see the mountains anyway, So, but same thing with Hawaii. I'm sure like after a while, like you kind of like don't appreciate it as much because you get busy with day-to-day stuff. And so hunters, when you're there, soak it in. You could probably literally go sit on the beach and get in the water and then go hike up and get in the snow, or at least high in some mountains at the same day, huh?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's about, I would say, in 2 hours, you could be freezing your butt off in snow and then be down at the beach in the sand, just getting sunburned.
And what more could you want, man? And hunting some cool stuff, man, and having a blast. So
yeah.
Shoot, Garrick, man. Hey, thanks for your time, man. And I hope you guys out there have learned a little bit more about hunting in Hawaii. I am excited for April when I come down and hang out with you, man. We're gonna have a blast.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a good time. I can't wait.
All right, my man. I'm gonna sign off, and I appreciate you again.
All right, right on. Thanks, Kurt.
This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession.